Donald Trump says Nancy Pelosi is evil. Pelosi has said she'd rather see Trump in an orange jumpsuit than in the White House. They couldn't be more different, except when it comes to making money. Digging through thousands of pages of disclosures, I found 10 stocks both President Trump and Nancy Pelosi are buying. Nation, this will blow your mind and probably leaving you asking the same question I did. How do politicians keep getting so rich? Pelosi turned a 37-year career in politics into a $130 million fortune and a return roughly of 16,900%. That is 169 times her money. Trump hasn't missed out, making over $2 billion in income last year alone, with $1.2 billion of that from cryptocurrency and over 20,000 stock trades. And while these two could not be more different politically, digging through their finances, unbelievably, they are buying the same stocks. I'm going to reveal the top 10 stocks both are buying, Trump and Pelosi, how to find this information, and how to piggyback on politicians' stock trading. And this first one, Tempest AI, ticker TEM, this first stock both Trump and Pelosi are buying, is one of the most interesting on the list because it is far smaller than the trillion-dollar tech giants we're going to talk about later. That means government policy could have a much bigger impact on its future. Pelosi added Tempest to her portfolio in January 2026 by exercising 50 call option contracts, giving her ownership of 5,000 shares. President Trump also initiated a position this year, purchasing between $15,000 and $50,000 worth of Tempest AI shares in May, according to his financial disclosures we'll look at later. Different sized investments, but both are now shareholders in the same fast-growing AI healthcare company. Tempest AI uses artificial intelligence to analyze clinical and genetic data, helping doctors make personalized treatment decisions. The company's value ultimately comes from collecting, organizing, and analyzing an enormous amounts of healthcare data. And that is exactly why Washington matters so much here. Tempest doesn't just need customers, it needs a permission slip from Washington. Nation, healthcare is one of the most heavily regulated industries in America. Everything from patient privacy rules under HIPAA to FDA oversight of AI-powered diagnostic tools can directly affect how quickly companies like Tempest can roll out their new products. The federal government is also one of the country's largest healthcare spenders through Medicare and Medicaid. Decisions on reimbursement, funding for precision medicine, AI regulation, and government research partnerships that all influences Tempest's growth. And that's why this stock stands out more than almost any other on today's list. At roughly $10 billion valuation, Tempest doesn't have the size or the political influence of those companies like Apple or Amazon. A favorable regulatory environment, or an unfavorable one, can move the needle a lot more. Now, whether that's why both Trump and Pelosi own shares is really impossible to know, but it is certainly a company where government policy is going to play a much bigger role than most investors realize. Next here, Vistra, ticker VST, and this one is just as interesting because it's also one of the biggest beneficiaries of the AI boom that both politicians appear to be betting on. Pelosi exercised 50 call options on Vistra in January 2026, adding 5,000 shares to her portfolio. President Trump has reported 10 transactions in Vistra stock this year, 6 purchases and 4 sales. While we never really know exactly what a politician still owns because these disclosures are delayed by weeks or even months, the larger purchases suggest he's likely to continue to hold that position. Vistra here isn't an AI company, it's one of America's largest power producers. But as AI data centers consume enormous amounts of electricity, utilities like Vistra have suddenly become one of the hottest trades on Wall Street. The challenge, though, is that building these new power plants, the transmission lines, and the energy infrastructure isn't just an engineering problem, it's becoming a political one too. Every project requires permits, environmental reviews, and a lot of times fights with the local communities that don't want those new data centers in their backyard. If the US wants to win the AI race, companies like Vistra are going to need policymakers that can support faster approvals and maybe overlook some of those local community objections. It's why heavy buy-in by politicians makes this one of the most interesting stocks on the list. Now, I'm going to reveal those next 8 stocks both Trump and Pelosi are buying, but I want to show you how to find this information so you can keep up with it. And honestly, because looking through this is going to blow your freaking mind. On the congressional side and Pelosi, under the Stop Trading on Congressional Knowledge, the Stock Act, because politicians love their acronyms, members of Congress are required to report stock transactions within 45 days of the trade. Because, yeah, that always happens. And am I the only one that thinks that this Stop Trading on Congressional Knowledge Act has not stopped politicians from making serious bank? Anyway, going to the House of Representatives Disclosure Clerk website and doing a search by name, you're going to find all these stock trades, along with all the other property and income information. And some of this is pretty wild. Like Pelosi owns a vineyard worth as much as $25 million, more than six commercial properties, and a partnership in both an Italian restaurant and the United Football League, along with all these stock investments that we're talking about here. Madam Speaker is making some bucks. On President Trump's side, it gets a lot more complicated. The president files an annual financial disclosure of transactions with the U.S. Office of Government Ethics. Here you can search by name and see the official disclosure, but have your coffee ready because it is a lot of scrolling, like reading the terms and conditions on your iPhone, except somehow even longer. Slightly easier than that is going to the ProPublica website, which does a better job of laying everything out, but it is still a lot of information, folks. It starts with hundreds of companies the president has set up around his properties, the licensing agreements, and other products. He's also got advertising payments here from Google and MyPillow. And if your fingers aren't tired of scrolling yet, you finally get down to the stocks. Over 20,000 trades last year, including Blue Owl Corporation, Tempest AI, Vistra, and the big ones that I'm going to reveal here. I know it is a lot of work, but nation, this is where you need to be spending your time investing. Michael and Samantha laugh because they think dad spends his Friday nights digging through government filings instead of watching Netflix. They're not wrong, but I've learned that the best investments aren't hidden. You just need to know where to look. Back to our list, and Uber, ticker UBER, is one of the newest names in Pelosi's portfolio. In May 2026, her husband purchased 200 call option contracts with a $50 strike price expiring in March 2027. And now in Pelosi's portfolio, you're going to see a lot of these kinds of option bets, which kind of strikes me as even more suspicious because those call options are a way of leveraging those big moves, maybe from inside information that the stock is going to jump. To be fair though, most of Pelosi's call options are for prices that are way below the current price, so it might just be a way to get more leverage and that upside return than just buying the stock outright. President Trump has also been an active trader in Uber this year, reporting 19 transactions with multiple purchases, including one valued between $1 and $5 million, though he has also sold some shares along the way. Now, Uber might be a technology company, but its future depends heavily on government policy. The company continues battling efforts to classify drivers as employees rather than those independent contractors, a change that could significantly increase its labor costs. It's also navigating local regulations on ride sharing, airport access, insurance requirements, and unionization efforts across major cities. And looking ahead for the company, another challenge is in autonomous driving. Uber has partnered with several robotaxi developers rather than building its own fleet, so future regulations around those self-driving vehicles could dramatically reshape its business. For a company facing labor, transportation, and AI regulation all at once, having a policymaker or two who supports that innovation over heavier regulation could make a giant difference. Intel, ticker INTC, is another surprising stock where both portfolios overlap here. Nancy Pelosi disclosed purchasing 200 Intel call options May 2026 with its $50 strike price and a March 2027 expiration, which, with the stock over $100 a share now, again, these are deep in the money. President Trump has also actively traded Intel this year with multiple purchases and sales, including buys valued between $50,000 and $100,000 each. Now, Intel has become one of the most politically important companies in America. The U.S. has made rebuilding domestic semiconductor manufacturing a national priority as it tries to reduce the dependence on overseas chip production, like from Taiwan. Beyond Trump's personal investment, the federal government has also invested almost $9 billion into Intel, a historic investment that gives it 10% ownership in the company. Now, against this, you have to wonder how far future government policy is going to favor Intel over even some of the other U.S. chip makers. Tariffs, semiconductor subsidies, export controls on China, and incentives for new chip factories could all have a major impact on Intel's turnaround. More than almost any company on this list, Intel's future depends not just on building those better chips, but on continued support from policymakers who really see those semiconductor manufacturing as a matter of national security. I'm going to highlight those next 6 stocks to buy, including my favorite AI stock next. But first, though, I want to highlight a special offer on the resource I'm using here for research. I've used Premium Access on Seeking Alpha for more than 12 years to get analysis and ideas, and more importantly, to make sure I'm seeing both the bull and bear case for a stock. With Seeking Alpha, you're always going to know why a stock is falling, moving higher, or where it could go next. So look for the link I'll leave in the description to try Premium Access risk-free for 7 days. If you like it, you're also going to get an exclusive coupon for $30 off your first year, so check out that link or just scan the QR code here. Broadcom, ticker AVGO, is one of my favorite AI stocks because it's positioned to profit from almost every stage of the AI revolution. Nancy Pelosi exercised 200 Broadcom call options in June of 2025, taking ownership of 20,000 shares in a transaction valued between $1 and $5 million. President Trump has also been a big investor, reporting 15 trades this year alone, including one purchase worth between $1 and $5 million. Now, unlike a lot of the other companies we talk about focused on just one part of AI, Broadcom sells critical technologies across the entire ecosystem. Its custom AI accelerators help power the largest cloud providers. Its networking chips move the massive amounts of data between AI servers, and it's positioned to benefit as AI expands from those giant data centers to the edge devices and enterprise applications. Here, you've got export restrictions on advanced chips, trade negotiations on Asia, tax incentives for domestic semiconductor investment, and antitrust scrutiny of large tech companies all can influence Broadcom's growth. This is one of the best companies positioned to benefit as AI spending continues to expand, and I would actually be surprised if Trump and Pelosi were not investing because pretty much everyone else is. Next here, Palo Alto Networks, ticker PANW, has been one of my highest conviction cybersecurity investments for years. I own 100 shares myself, up about 130%, and I still like it as one of the best long-term buy and hold investments. Pelosi exercised 140 call options in Palo Alto Networks in 2024, taking ownership of 14,000 shares in a transaction between $1 and $5 million. President Trump has also traded the stock this year, reporting 12 transactions, including 7 purchases and 5 sales. Folks, cybersecurity has become a national security priority, putting companies like Palo Alto at the center of government policies. Federal cybersecurity spending, defense contracts, AI security standards, and just regulation protecting those critical infrastructure all create that long-term demand for the company's products. Palo Alto was one of just 2 cybersecurity companies, along with CrowdStrike Holdings (CRWD), to receive early access to Anthropic's Mythos AI model for security testing, and I don't doubt at all that government influence had something to do with its early access. And here, Alphabet, ticker GOOGL, is much more than Google search. Pelosi purchased 50 call options on Alphabet in January 2025, later exercising those options for 5,000 shares. President Trump has also been an active buyer, reporting 20 Alphabet transactions this year, including 14 purchases and 6 sales. It is not an overstatement to say Alphabet's future is tied to industries where Washington has enormous influence. The company remains a leader in search and artificial intelligence, but it's also facing antitrust lawsuits that could reshape parts of its business. Google got hit with its second antitrust monopoly ruling from a federal judge in April of last year, but the Department of Justice has been maybe not so surprisingly quiet this year. At the same time, its Waymo division is leading in the race towards autonomous vehicles, an industry that depends on regulators approving that broader deployment of the self-driving technology. Beyond that, Alphabet continues investing billions into healthcare and life sciences through Verily and its isomorphic labs, making healthcare regulation and FDA oversight increasingly important to its long-term growth. Add in AI regulations, privacy laws, export controls on those chips, and ongoing antitrust scrutiny, and it's hard to find another company with more at stake from government policy. And Nvidia here, ticker NVDA, another very interesting investment, not just because it's at the center of the AI revolution, but because the US government now receives 15% of its chip sale revenue to China in exchange for an export license. Pelosi exercised 50 call options into 5,000 shares in January 2026 and continues to hold both Nvidia stocks and call options after building a position for years. President Trump has reported 18 Nvidia trades this year alone, including multiple purchases worth more than $1 million. And while Nvidia sits at the center of that AI revolution, it's also at the center of a technology war between the US and China. Export restrictions on advanced AI chips, licensing approvals, tariffs, and national security policies all have an immediate impact on the company's future sales and growth. Now, the next stock is actually one of the least surprising, but I want to know which of these surprised you the most? Which stock? The fact that Trump owns it, Pelosi owns it, or both? Let me know in the comments below. And here, Apple, ticker AAPL, again, probably the least surprising stock on this list. It's one of the largest and most widely owned companies in the world, and really an iconic American brand, so I'd almost be more surprised if a politician didn't own shares here. Pelosi has owned Apple shares for years, with her latest disclosure showing the purchase of 20 call options in December 2025, the $100 strike price expiring January 2027. As we've seen, with the stock already at $300 a share, those options are deep in the money and are going to convert to those shares. For his part, President Trump has reported 16 Apple transactions this year alone in 2026, including 2 purchases valued between $1 and $5 million. But even a company as dominant as Apple depends on decisions made in Washington. You got tariffs on imported electronics, trade negotiations with China, App Store regulation, and privacy laws all influence this company's profits. Most of the big US tech companies have come under heavy fines in Europe over monopoly practices, Apple being hit by a 700 million euro fine last year. In response, President Trump threatened the EU with a 100% tariff on countries that imposed their digital services tax on US tech giants. Amazon, ticker AMZN, one of the biggest companies, but also a big surprise for me showing up on this list for both politicians here. Nancy Pelosi has steadily built her position, exercising 50 call options for 5,000 more shares January of this year, while also purchasing another 20 call options expiring next year. While she was Speaker, Pelosi continuously called for big regulations on big tech and has hit Amazon often on its labor practices. President Trump has been even more active, reporting 26 Amazon trades in 2026, including several purchases valued between $1 million and $5 million, despite his long-running public feud with Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, which also owns the Washington Post. Now, Amazon has enormous exposure to government policy. The company continues to face antitrust scrutiny over its dominance in e-commerce, investigations into its marketplace practices, labor disputes, and unionization efforts. At the same time, Amazon Web Services is one of the largest government cloud providers, making federal technology spending another important growth driver. That might mean that whatever politicians may say publicly, Amazon has become too important to the US economy for Washington's decisions not to have a major impact on its future, and apparently that's something investors on both sides of the aisle recognize. Try Seeking Alpha Premium free for 7 days and get a $30 off discount only with the exclusive coupon in the link below. Don't forget to join the Let's Talk Money community by tapping that subscribe button and clicking the bell notification.